Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, British Prime Minister Theresa May makes the rounds in China on an official visit, securing new trade and development deals. Could these indeed lead to a new golden era between China and the UK? I have an exclusive one-on-one interview with Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai about her global advocacy for providing education for young girls. We begin with British Prime Minister Theresa May's official three-day visit to China. After visiting the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences, Theresa May met with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Thursday in Beijing. The two leaders discussed a variety of issues, including trade. On Wednesday, the Prime Minister unveiled an educational deal during her visit to the city of Wuhan in central China. The initiative includes the extension of a math teacher exchange program and a campaign to promote English language learning in China.
President Xi Jinping met with Mrs. May at the Diaoyutai State Guest House, calling on both countries to work for the healthy and steady development of bilateral ties in the new era. Her visit marks the first annual China-UK Prime Ministers meeting, following President Xi's state visit to the UK in 2015. It is also Mrs. May's first official visit to China since she took office, and the first by a British Prime Minister in 4 years. On Wednesday, Premier Li Keqiang met with the British leader at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. The two sides agreed to take their mutually beneficial cooperation to a new level across various sectors under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. Premier Li and Mrs. May also witnessed the signing of agreements covering areas such as trade and investment, financial services, scientific innovation, environmental protection, education, and bioscience. According to the Ministry of Commerce, China and the UK's bilateral trade hit $79 billion in 2017. Britain had made direct investments of $1.5 billion in China, while China's non-financial investment in the UK hit a little more than $1.5 billion. The Prime Minister said she was seeking a major economic partner for post-Brexit Britain and looking to ring in the golden era between the UK and China.
In terms of the future for the relationship between the UK and China when we leave the European Union, we've today agreed this joint review of trade and investment review, which I think is a good step towards looking towards what our future trade relationship can be.
China and the UK are permanent members of the UN Security Council and members of the G20. Chinese officials said the cooperation between the two countries would be beneficial not only for the two countries, but also for world peace and development.
For more on warming relations between China and the UK, we are joined in our Beijing studio, Wang Yiwei, Jean Monnet Chair Professor from the Chinese University, Renmin University. Welcome, sir, to our program. Meanwhile, we would like to welcome as well Mike Bastian, a professor at the University of Southampton. Meanwhile, joining us in Cambridge, we have Professor David de Creamer, the KPMG Chaired Professor at Cambridge University Judge Business School. He's also founder of the Cambridge One Belt One Road Center, which is now hosting the One Belt One Road UK-China Cooperation Conference here in China. Welcome to everyone. I want to start with you, Professor de Creamer. A trade deal earlier was being mentioned. Is there any hope that one could be reached? Free trade deal between China and the UK?
Well, they definitely have the intentions to do so, but I think legally and technically speaking it will be impossible because the UK is still part of the EU. So Brexit negotiations will finish in 2019, and then it needs to be seen which trade agreement they will have to use, EU-related or world trade agreements, for example. So at this moment, legally and officially speaking, I don't think an agreement will be possible during this visit. But the intention is there because the potential is enormous.
Professor Wang, how much swaying power does the UK have now toward, let's just say, policy making inside the European Union and also for the future of the UK by this administration, the May administration?
During the transition period, when UK is still in the European Union, even after the Brexit, there's a transition that all the European laws still apply to the United Kingdom. So we still pay attention to the relations with the UK. At the same time, to go beyond the bilaterally and European affairs, UK is permanent member of United Nations Security Council, so the Global Britain, the other Commonwealth, and so particularly for the Belt Road Initiative, the multiple countries, they are also former colonies of the United Kingdom, and then United Kingdom still have many calls on the international standard and the rules. So I think still we have many things to do.
All right, given the reality, Professor Bastian, how could the UK, who was very active when the AIIB was established, UK was one of the very first so-called Western countries to join, but given the limited capabilities UK is having right now, at least for the moment, what can UK do in order to get the best out of this visit? How much really can we expect?
I think we can expect a fair amount. There'll be obviously strong rhetoric, and stronger rhetoric, I think, is needed from the Prime Minister. But I think it's at the lower level where the business leaders, and I think she's taken about 60 of them with her, a very large number, can really start to make good relationships with Chinese partners. So it's really at the business level that we need to monitor this visit and future visits and future relationship building. And I see those growing quite significantly, even though, as the other panelists have said, there probably will be a transitionary period where the UK won't be free to form free trade deals. But I think the UK business sector, particularly the small and medium-sized sector, are increasingly keen on China because of Brexit. So I think we'll see progress very, very quickly.
Professor Wang, as you may know, Mr. Liu He, coming from the financial part of the Chinese Central Committee, has been talking about in the World Economic Forum in Davos, China's commitment for the next 3 years: environmental protection, poverty alleviation, together with reducing of risk of the financial sector, developing an economy, all through reform and opening up. So very concrete Chinese commitment to the world. How much can UK cash in and also get its opportunity as a result?
I think that's the reason Prime Minister has also claimed that the golden era is still there. I mean, China's structural reform, more openness, particularly for the financial and insurance market, and also education market, which allowed the foreign stakeholders maybe can have more than maybe 51%. This is huge. I think the Chinese market will be open more than expectations of the West. So UK, the economy very rely on the service and high level of the particularly for the financial. So I think the relations between UK and China economically very complementary. So that's the reason I think the golden era. But the problem is whether UK can catch of these opportunities because of the uncertainty of their Brexit.
Well,
and
that's
the
their
government
big
is
question
also
mark
strong.
politically for them, right? Professor De Creamer, do you think UK will be able to get the sunshine of this opportunity, be able to catch it?
To be able to cash, not immediately, I think, but like was said before, it's at the lower level. Definitely, the businesses will definitely profit from it, and you have to realize as well, a political visit like this is always a symbolic act. It's showing intention. It's showing the fact that the countries want to collaborate. When it comes down to pinpointing down the legal, the business consequences, those will always appear later. So businesses know they follow the political actions, but if the political actions don't give, like for example, when Theresa May comes back and she's under attack in the UK as well, and there will be a new leader, things will change. But what is important is that at the lower level, business relationships have been built, and businesses know their way as well. So they can also operate independent of the political leadership. But at this moment, this is all a symbolic action showing an intention towards the long term.
Right. Professor Wang, if I could go to you, I mean, it is very competitive, the Chinese market, and also the Chinese investment for overseas. How much do you think, from China's perspective, the UK has got in order to be competitive? We're going to see a string of European leadership coming to visit China at the very beginning of the year. So how much has the charm of the UK, do you think, will be able to help it in a way to explore all of these opportunities, all in which are competitive?
Firstly, I think the UK is very pragmatic. I think the business is the focus on the Chinese economic structure, changing from export to import, and also from attract FDI from abroad to invest abroad. I think UK attract more investment than Germany, Italy, France combined together in Europe. So UK's financial market is quite open to China. But the problem is we expect in the former time that UK will promote the bilateral investment treaty between China and the European Union. But so far, this is uncertainty for the UK, particularly for the London. We cannot expect that much that London can play a very important role of RMB internationalization. But Shanghai Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange,
right,
and the local government, regional corporations are still huge potential.
Well, having said that, though, Mr. De Creamer, if I could go to you for a specific case study, something called the Hinkley Point C project. That was approved back the year 2016, and things were going quite well, but then there was so-called the security concerns. It has to be put up. It's one of those Chinese investment projects inside the UK. So people are wondering, besides, you know, the wonderful shake of hands between the two leaders, is the UK really going to extend its olive branch to Chinese investment for real, or this is all political gestures?
No, it will be for real, because because of the situation that we live in today. You have to recognize, first of all, the fact that with the nuclear plant, this was in the time that David Cameron was still MP, and when Theresa May came to power, she put it on hold, or stopped it actually. So that's already political change. That's one thing. The second thing is you have to realize that the UK is trying to get the best deals now after Brexit. That's one thing. But they don't have that much bargaining power, and also towards China their bargaining power initially will be pretty limited because they will need new trade partners. So in that sense I'm very confident that yes, they mean serious business with China. The shape it will take and what the limitations are and the challenges, they still need to be determined because of who will be the next new leader, because many fear and think Theresa May will not be it, and what will be the deal after Brexit.
That's right. Professor Bastian, those are all so-called the risks for business people. So uncertainties is the thing that the business least want. So with all of those in mind, how attractive is the UK for real for now, Professor Bastian?
I think it's very attractive. I mean, there are risks, as the panelists have said, and there is uncertainty with the post-Brexit world. And Theresa May's own position is coming under even more serious threat, particularly with the recent announcements by Michel Barnier about their idea of a transitionary period. The Brexiteers will put more pressure on her. But I think the business community largely operate independent of government more and more in the UK, and they see this as a very, very attractive opportunity. And I think on the Chinese side they do as well. So I think the two business communities will come together very, very quickly, quite surprisingly, regardless of the political administration and political policy.
When you talk about
I think what we need to focus on is certain industries. Yeah, the creative industries, I think, is what we really need to highlight, and fashion in particular.
Well, fashion industry would be wonderful, but the proportion of fashion industry in the overall economic development is I would say quite limited. So here's the bigger question, Professor De Creamer, if you could help me. Belt and Road is something you are concentrating on. We have, in the previous administration, agreements between China and the UK on developing the northern part of the UK and also extending the Belt and Road to the part of Europe. Now we have postponed it. The thing is, will it ever have a chance to be revitalized, whether it's about northern part or southern part or other parts of the UK, or the UK being a partner inside the European continent, be able to work with China on the Belt and Road Initiative together with other partners? That is the question. Is there any thought about that at all? Any plan at all?
Well, I do hope that they will work together, and given the economic reality, they will have to. The One Belt, One Road, it started off as a very much focused economic initiative, but you have to realize that OBOR, like they call it, is much more than only economy. It's an exchange of culture, so the creative sector, the philosophies, or cultural products, the exchange there is also very important. It's also an idea in spirit. So what we see is that on the long term, the One Belt, One Road initiative to succeed, will have to have shared ownership. So that it's not only perceived as a Chinese initiative only, but that it will be based on the collaboration between different countries. And from that point of view, I think both the economic as political reality on the longer term will make sure that EU, UK, China, they'll collaborate. I'm pretty sure of that.
Professor Wang?
We expect that Prime Minister Theresa May, to this visit, can sign at the government level the joint Build the Belt Road initiative deal. But unfortunately, her power is so weak that she cannot repeat that the leading role that the UK has taken in the AIIB joint because of the US pressure. US, I think, the relationship with the UK is still quite so special. The UK's military industry not so independent from the United States. So with the excuse of so-called international rules based, and then make some obstacles between China and the UK corporations of the Belt and Road Initiative.
While we are speaking, gentlemen, we are already seeing quite a number of visits coming from the European leaders to China. At the very beginning of the new year, more and more European leaders are eager to learn more about China. French President Emmanuel Macron, for example, became the first foreign head of state to visit China in 2018, followed by British Prime Minister Theresa May right now, from Wednesday to Friday, with Dutch King Willem Alexander arriving on February the 7th, one after another. What exactly is the nature, Professor Wang, if I could knock on your door once again, of relationship, particular trade relationship between China and the European Union, and also China and the sporadic countries in the European Union?
I think the China-European Union cooperation now go beyond the bilateral trade areas, which promote, I think, the openness, inclusiveness, and sustainable development of the globalization and the multilateralism, global governance, particularly so-called American First and President Trump more focus on the U.S. interests. So China-European cooperation is very crucial for the world.
Professor De Creamer?
Yes. I agree. One of the things that happened, of course, is that the U.S. has withdrawn a little bit. America first, although they still want to collaborate, but this has brought in a certain dynamic within the EU where you see that despite hesitations in the past, the EU is now full force looking towards the east and is definitely interested in having more trade agreements also with China and larger size of Asia. And of course, the Brexit dynamics just reinforced that. So yes, you can expect more and more statespeople from EU countries visiting China. And I think ultimately the big winner at the moment is China.
Is it, Professor Bastin?
I think most definitely that the influx of foreign investment, foreign business, expedites the internationalization process of Chinese companies, Chinese consumers, and that will push modernization further. So China is benefiting most definitely, and economically it's seen as so attractive. It's related to Trump's policies, but the IMF have just upgraded GDP for this year to 6.6%, 6.4%. That's very healthy compared with the world average of 3.9%. So Chinese consumers are benefiting massively from this. So there's a win-win situation going on here.
Professor Wang, though, how would China see this promising yet uncertain picture? Because we do understand there is a very strong ally relationship between many of the European countries and the United States. And China and the United States want to work as partnership on certain issues, even though President Trump claimed China as the rival during his State of the Union address yesterday. Professor Wang, how does China calmly look at the picture and the nature of things?
I think this is 21st century. We should have their future-oriented mentality, not Cold War mentality. For example, recently Nikon, the companies, fell many troubles. It's not because of their others, a competitor from Samsung or from Sony. It's because of their smart cell phone. So the U.S. felt pressure, not from China actually, it's from the new type of globalization. I think the United States should understand that they should work together with China and Europe partner to push forward globalization and global governance, or not vice versa.
Professor de Krumer, now we are speaking, but many of the European capitals are also very busy talking to one another. Whether it's Brexit issue, whether it's about the future of the European Union, are still uncertain pictures. Could you help us to understand, with your understanding of the politics, where is Europe going, if I could mention it as a whole? And during this process, even with Brexit, how is the UK likely to map out its best interest in this process?
Well, it's a very good question, but also a very complex one, as you can imagine. I think my own personal view has always been, when the referendum showed that people want to leave and Brexit would become a reality, that there are no winners, that this is a loss-loss for both sides. At this moment, it just seems to be to evaluate who's going to have the most losses, and it seems to be the UK at this moment, but we never know. So there's uncertainty on both sides, if you could say, both UK and EU. The EU, one of their biggest concerns is, of course, that if they allow the UK to exit in a relatively easy way, the fear will be there that other countries within the EU may take similar steps. And they don't want that, because that's the loss of the Union, and that's the loss of their capital, their economy. So that's a big concern. So at this point, that's why I said that the UK has very little bargaining room towards the EU. And if they get a hard Brexit, they will have very little bargaining room towards the rest of the world as well, initially. So that's one big uncertainty for them. For the EU, where are they heading to? Well, they have a very strong currency now. The market is pushing them into that direction. No matter what Draghi says, actually, of the European Central Bank, the currency stays high. Although they implemented many measures to increase inflation, which was almost zero up to 2 years ago. So for them, they're still regulating their own internal economy. Having said that, I do see that there are very positive signs between the EU and China relationships. Like I mentioned earlier, in the past, EU was very hesitant to engage in these relationships, but right now they are very much looking for new opportunities.
Right.
The biggest threat for the EU, however, is that if you look at the innovation that is happening in terms of technology, in terms of stepping outside of their boundaries, what they're known politically, social system-wise, they have a problem there. So one of the positives that the UK could have is, because they break out of this status quo kind of thinking that some economists refer to, UK has the opportunity, the liberty now actually to engage with the rest of the world again, try out new systems, experiment, which brings innovation. The EU and innovation, that's another story right now. And I think the EU is starting to realize that, hence also the reinforced relationships with China, because China will dominate basically technology, IT development for so many years to come. Also, that's why China talks about the digital One Belt, One Road. That's going to be a major challenge, and if EU is not careful, they may miss the train there.
Professor Wang, a lot of wonderful analysis, it seems, from Professor de Krumer about China from the EU and the European perspective. But Professor Wang, for China, it is about managing the uncertainties. It's about knowing that things could change at any time when the European Union changes, when the UK changes, or their relationship with the others changes. So here's the thing, Professor Wang, if you could help us 30 seconds to help us understand, how would China manage that uncertainty? Do we have a strategy?
Well, focus on the new era, like the gentleman mentioned about digital economy, AI, 5G. and also focus on the regional government corporations. I think that may be hedging the Brexit uncertainty.
All right. Time is running up for this discussion and certainly running up for some of the other crises going on in the world. We hope there will be solutions and good solutions for all. Thank you so much, the three of you gentlemen, for being with us. Wang Yiwei, David Creamer, Mike Bastian. Really appreciate gentlemen for being with us. Thank you. And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. It's still to come on our program. The Pakistani activist and Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai talked to me about her harrowing experiences as a young activist and her untiring efforts to get young girls back to school. The full interview right after this break. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. On the sidelines of the 2018 World Economic Forum in Davos, I interviewed the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize winner, Malala Yousafzai. This is her first interview with Chinese media. Malala talked about her current plan to help female school dropouts around the world to return in class. She also shared the story of how she was forced out of school, her hard work and achievements in helping girls get educated. Before the interview, take a look like this.
Today is a day of great happiness for me. I'm humbled that the Nobel Committee has selected me.
Malala Yousafzai is an ordinary Pakistani girl who won respect and admiration around the world. When the Taliban took control of the Swat Valley in Pakistan, she spoke out, refused to be silent, and fought for her right to an education. The United Nations declared Malala Day in her honor, and Time magazine named her one of the most influential people in the world. At the age of 17, she was announced as the co-recipient of the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize for her struggle against the suppression of children and young people and for championing the right of all children to education. She is the youngest ever Nobel Prize laureate.
Malala, welcome to CGTN.
Thank you so much. It's an honor.
Wonderful to see you finally. I like that scarf, by the way.
Thank you.
Is it from home?
This is the culture and the color. This is the dress is not from home, but it represents my culture. I like your jacket.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's easy to move around at the World Economic Forum. Chit chat away. Now your life has changed from nobody knows to everybody knows. That's a huge transition. How do you see this transition?
To me, I'm just the old Malala as I was before. The world might know me or not, but I haven't changed. I'm just still the
Okay,
same.
so use a few adjectives. What is that the norm, Malala?
How do I describe myself? I don't know. Just like I am an activist for girls' education and for women's empowerment. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I have a family. I have friends, and I'm just part of this world where I want better world for everyone, and I'm focusing especially on girls, and I hope that people and girls in China, in other countries I know that they're following my story, but I also hope that they also stand up for their rights and speak out.
People are extremely interested in how you are doing right now. Would you like to brief us a little bit about that? Where are you living? How you are doing with your life?
So I live in the UK and I am studying at Oxford. I'm studying PPE, which is philosophy, politics and economics.
What a combination.
Yes, a great combination, but it's quite hard. You have to work a lot of reading. But I am enjoying my time because it's an opportunity to socialize, get to know incredible and amazing people at university, make good friends. So I'm enjoying it and I'm excited for this.
But you're away from your culture. So how are you going to do about your cause, which is girl education? I guess mainly in the developing world.
So I'm focused on the education of all girls all around the world. And there are more than 130 million girls who are out of school. So I have been making trips to Nigeria, to Mexico, to Lebanon, to Jordan, and I have been traveling around the world to make sure that we can reach out to all girls who are out of school. And so even though I have been away from Pakistan, unfortunately, and I want to go back, but it has not stopped me from my fight for education, and I continue my work.
Before, it's about you, Malala, that you fight a cause on your own. But now you have to work with everybody, bring in all the players, governments, businesses, and different societies with different cultures. How is that likely to be done? What have you learned?
Yes, I have good experience in working with all these sectors, from government to business to NGOs, to then working on ground and meeting young girls and activists. And I think the important thing is that we all have to work together. It's not the job of one person or one community. Business people, they have expertise, they have science, they have skills that they need to invest in girls' education and their empowerment. Government also need to change their policies. They need to increase their funding towards girls' education. NGOs, they also need to come together and exchange and share what they have learned and how they can improve their work. And also we need to go and reach out to young girls and support them in their empowerment, and also that they can get quality education.
Determined to continue her campaign for girls' education, Malala and Ziauddin set up the Malala Fund in 2013. The organization champions every girl's right to 12 years of free, safe, quality education. They believe girls are the best investment in securing peace and prosperity in the world. The Malala Fund works in regions where most girls miss out on secondary education, such as Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Nigeria, and countries housing Syrian refugees. Over the years, Malala has met with girls around the world, carrying her message of girls' education and equality.
When I heard her story, I hoped to be like her, or at least do a little of what she was able to do.
So I started Malala Fund 5 years ago, and my vision was to see every girl in school. Simple. All girls in school, whether the girls are in China or India or in Mexico or in Africa, everywhere we want to see girls getting quality education, because when we empower girls, they become empowered women, and then they contribute to the economy, then they contribute to the society. So right now we are focusing on empowering local advocates, local champions in their work for education. So for example, in Afghanistan, we are supporting a project where they are training female teachers, so that girls can go to school where there are female teachers rather than male teachers. In Lebanon, we are supporting e-learning skills. We are supporting, we're making sure that girls can have access to STEM skills as well. So we are looking at what the problem is and how can we address the problem, how can we solve that problem, so that girls can have access to quality education.
But then the question is how? Isn't that?
So we are supporting local partners. We are giving them grants, we are giving them support. We are also helping them in their advocacy. So we are doing advocacy in the countries, we are doing advocacy globally as well.
Have you met some of the girls that your cause is supporting?
Definitely. Just a week ago. So just a week ago I was in Lebanon, and I visited one of my projects that we are supporting, and we were in this room of 12 girls, and they were all Syrian refugees, and I asked those girls what their dreams were, and one girl said she wants to become an architect. And when I asked why, she said she decided to become an architect because on the day when she left her country, Syria, she saw her country devastated and destroyed, and that day she decided that one day she will become an architect so she can rebuild her country. So now girls like her are receiving education, they're receiving education through digital learning, so we are making it easier for them to have quality education. I am in touch with girls, I meet them, I visit these schools that we are supporting, and it's just amazing to see how education can change the lives of girls. Education gives them hope.
So I guess going there, meeting those girls, in a way also reminds you of your life in the past.
Definitely, when the girls were talking about how they saw wars and conflicts in their region and they had to leave their home, it was not their choice. They had no other option. And it just reminded me of my time in South Valley when there was terrorism happening, when girls' education was banned, when more than 400 schools were destroyed, and we had to leave our valley for 3 months. And that feeling that when you don't know when you would go back to your home is the worst time of your life.
Malala faced countless dangers in pursuit of her advocacy. Death threats against her were published in newspapers and slipped under her door. On Facebook, she received threats and fake profiles were created under her name. When none of this worked, a Taliban spokesman said they were forced to act. On October 9, 2012, a Taliban gunman shot her in the head, neck and shoulder while on a bus in an attempt to silence her. Even though she was seriously injured, she survived. She was in critical condition as she was transported to the UK for treatment. She had multiple surgeries and she went through months of rehabilitation. People in Pakistan and around the world prayed for her recovery. The 10 militants involved in her attack were sentenced to prison, but Malala said she had already forgiven them.
To be honest, I don't think back. I don't think about those people.
You don't want to think back? Or
I don't want to think back.
Or not necessary?
I think what's important is that you just look forward, and I think I just wish that they can learn about humanity. They can learn about the true message of Islam. They can learn that it is always wrong to harm anyone, and they learn the importance of education. That education is important for their daughters, for their sisters as well. And I had forgiven them long ago, and I still say I forgive them, and I just do not think back.
You've forgiven them already?
Yes.
What does it take to forgive?
It just, when I was recovering from that attack, I think I became stronger, and I realized that I was standing up for a cause that was so important that this was just a second life, and I dedicated this life to girls' education. I said I will just fight for education throughout my life now. So I just don't think back, and I don't think about the attack, and I just feel like it just never happened. I just ignored for a second that it just never happened.
Because it will make you more comfortable, or?
I think I just look forward, never look back. But then when I go in and I meet girls in refugee camps, and when they tell me their stories, then it just reminds me of my past.
So what are some of the things that you could share with us when it comes to the adjective you use, be brave and be going out there? But it's only adjective. When it comes to actions, it's not easy.
I know it's hard. I know it's challenging. I don't say it's easy, but I think if you stop, then that's even harder. If you stop, because
I love that.
I always say that. Some people ask me, like, why did you start speaking out? Like, it was hard, it was challenging. And I said it was even harder to live in that situation and not speak out. How could you live in terrorism? How could you live in a place where there are these people with guns and targeting people, destroying schools and banning girls from education, banning women from going outside the houses? Like, how could you imagine your life for a second in that? And I thought I would put my life at risk, but I'll speak out. Because I just cannot live in this situation. This is even worse.
It's a great point, I think.
So if women want to see change, they have to speak out.
And they have to stick to it.
They have to stick to it, and they have to be brave. And I really appreciate seeing these movements around the world when women are speaking out and raising their voice against sexual harassment, or speaking out about all the violence that they face. And women have to be brave. But also we need changes in the law, responsibility from the governments as well. So everyone has to play a role in this. It's not just one person's job, but I think women also have to stay brave and resilient.
But Malala, many women would say, I respect you, Malala, but at the same time, I don't want to have a fighting life as you do. What would you say to those women?
I think advocacy and campaigning does not really mean that you come out on the streets every day. It's the small steps that you take. For example, you make sure that your daughter is safe and protected, and she gets safe and quality education. You make sure that you take care of your health. You make sure that you get equal pay as men. You make sure that you are not sexually harassed. You make sure that you have equal rights as anyone else. This is not activism that you are on the streets every day and you are, I don't know, doing protests. That is also important at some point, but I think the activism that I talk about, the change that I want to talk about, is the everyday things that you do. What do you teach your children? What do you teach your friends? How do you interact? And when you see that there is some kind of discrimination happening against women, do you speak out or not?
I can tell you have a lot in your mind and a lot of work to do. Hopefully we could all join you. So thank you so much for joining us, and all the best. Thank you so much,
Thank
Malala.
you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. That's our exclusive interview with Malala Yousafzai, the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize winner, and certainly a strong advocate for girls' education. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.